Hi, Eve here, and today what we're going to talk about is it emotional hunger or is it physical hunger? It could be so confusing for a lot of my clients to distinguish between physical hunger and emotional hunger. So today I want to give you a couple of tools so you can make that distinction. So hi, my name is Eve, and I love helping people have ease and peace with food in any situation, no matter what is happening in their lives. And the reason I'm making this video is because this past weekend, I had an emotionally challenging time, and I noticed that I was experiencing emotional hunger. Some people call it mouth hunger or the urge to eat. And I was just so happy that I had so many tools in my toolbox to be able to identify and know for myself that what I was experiencing was actually emotional hunger. And so those tools I want to share with you are some things that you could ask yourself to determine whether you're experiencing is physical hunger or emotional hunger. The reason why you want to know the difference is because obviously if it's physical hunger, you want to eat. And if it's emotional hunger, you want to know that so that you could address what's going on more directly without going to food. So, question number one that I recommend asking yourself if you want to determine whether this is emotional hunger or physical hunger is asking yourself, when was your last meal? Because if your last meal was over 4 or 5 hours ago, chances are that what you're experiencing is physical hunger. It's true, you could experience emotional hunger at the same time as physical hunger, but if you ate, 3 or 4 or 5 hours ago, that is legitimate physical hunger, and it's very wise to address that with food. So in those cases, you want to get food. So in the situation that I was in, I had eaten like an hour and a half ago. So I knew that it wasn't physical hunger because I had eaten not that long ago. The second question I want you to ask yourself to help you determine whether it's physical hunger or emotional hunger is, what was your last meal? Because if the last thing you ate was a cucumber, that's realistically not gonna last you, a full 3 or 4 hours. So if your last meal had adequate nutrition, like adequate carbohydrates, adequate protein, sources of fat, some fibrous food, a source of calcium, it's a balanced plate of food, it's more likely that will satisfy you longer for 3 or 4 hours. But again, if you gave yourself something small, like a piece of fruit or a granola bar or something like that, or string cheese, realistically, that's not going to satisfy for a full 3 to 4 hours. So when I asked myself the question, when was my last meal? It was only an hour and a half prior. What was my last meal? I actually thought in my head, did I give myself adequate nutrition? And in this situation, yes, I had. So that was another way I could rule out that this wasn't physical hunger. Because again, if you don't give yourself adequate nutrition or you have something small, chances are you're going to get hungry sooner. And that's totally fine and expectable. As far as asking yourself, what did you last eat? Another question you could, ask yourself is, was it, really satisfying? Is what I gave myself what I truly wanted? Was I depriving myself or restricting, or did I force myself to eat something just because it was there, even though it wasn't what I really wanted? Because if you didn't give yourself what you truly wanted, or if you're restricting or depriving, that may actually show up sooner. That might show up in your next meal. You may feel a sense of satisfaction. So again, that's not necessarily emotional hunger. That just may be a sense of resentment of not really enjoying your last meal. So it's really, really wise, as you're learning how to distinguish between physical hunger and emotional hunger, that you're giving yourself adequate meals, and that what you're giving yourself is something that you truly want to be eating, something that truly satisfies yourself. So once you ask yourself, when was my last meal? What was my last meal? Was it nutritiously adequate? Was it satisfying? The next question you want to ask yourself is, how did I eat my last meal? Because if you were distracted during your last meal, even though you may have had enough food, if your brain doesn't witness yourself eating the food, it's not going to be as satisfied. So what might be showing up for you is just this sense of lack of satisfaction. So what if you're being distracted by, the TV, your phone? Oh my goodness, that's so common. It's so hard to resist the phone. A book, a magazine, work, those are some things you may want to put aside if it's showing up later for you. So once you've determined that, it's not physical hunger because, you just ate not that long ago, you gave yourself a satisfying meal that you truly wanted and it was nutritiously balanced and you ate it in a mindful way, from there you could determine that, hey, this is actually something emotional going on for me. And sure enough for me, as I mentioned earlier, it was a hard day. And once I identified that it was something emotional going on for me, I was able to address that accordingly. And I'll probably talk about that in a future video about how to address emotions that come up during your day. But for now, I'm just talking about giving you tools to help you identify whether it's physical hunger or emotional hunger. And the reason why it's so important to know this is because, again, if you're physically hungry, I want you to address that with adequate food. I want you to eat, choose a nutritious meal. And if it's emotional hunger, I want you to know the difference because it could be so confusing. The truth of the situation is where we feel our emotions, is very similar to where we feel our physical hunger. Think about it this way. Where do you feel hungry? Some people feel it in their stomach, in their chest or their throat, or maybe in their mouth, like a sense of dryness. Interestingly, for many of us, myself included, that's one of the places where we feel our emotions. After all, they're called feelings. Emotions are called feelings. Feelings, the word feel implies that it's in the body. And so feeling, those feelings happen oftentimes along the same course where food goes. So again, that's why it could be so confusing and why it's so important to learn how to separate the two, physical hunger from emotional hunger. And the truth is, the better you get at eating when you're hungry, identifying that, okay, this is physical hunger and matching it with food, the less likely you will be to confuse the two. But I just wanted to give you this tool anyway. So just to recap, again, if you're not sure whether you're experiencing physical hunger or emotional hunger, some things you could ask yourself is, when was my last meal? If your last meal was over 3 or 4 hours ago, it may be legitimate hunger. The next thing you want to ask yourself is legitimate physical hunger, that is. The next question you want to ask yourself is, what was my last meal? Was it nutritiously adequate? Was it what I truly wanted? Because if you just gave yourself, a piece of fruit, chances are that's really not going to hold you over for 2 or 3 or 4 hours, right? Legitimately, you're probably physically hungry again. And the third question to ask yourself is, how was I eating? What was the level of the mindfulness of my meal? Was I distracted? And are my senses deprived of the enjoyment of a meal? So if you feel like, you ate your meal mindfully, it was a balanced meal, and you didn't eat that long ago, it may very well be emotional hunger. I hope this was helpful. I hope you were able to understand what I was trying to say. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. If you want, you could click the bell too, and you'll get a notification that I put out a new video. If you want my free ebook, Stop Overeating Now, you could go to my website at www.vitamineve.com. I'm gonna put a link below. And if you are curious whether or not you're eating, because of physical hunger or emotional hunger, or if this is one of the things that you're struggling with, if you haven't had a food freedom coaching session, a private coaching session on the phone with me, it might be time to sign up. So I'll put a link to that below. I offer one to anybody who's interested, one time a year, to explore, what is it that you want to accomplish around food and eating, what might be standing in your way. And from there, you'll have clarity and more energy and motivation to take that very next step. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching.